الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين وباعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على خاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما على الإمام المنتظر وحجة الله الثاني عشر ابن العسكري المنتظر ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم القرآن الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل ضلالا مبينا. صلوات. Into the third night of our discussion. Slowly we need to be taking this further and into a little more profound state, the series that we've been discussing. And just to link up to tonight's majlis and tonight's lecture, a little recap of last night's discussion, and then we can link it up to tonight's majlis. Last night, if you remember and recall, we discussed that aspect of the wilayat when we explained how in the course of the value of the wilayat, the traits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran under the verse 73 of Surah Anbiya. And we explained that Quran and Allah, in introducing His Ahlul Bayt, indicated on three sifat and three attributes. And just linking up that surah number 7, the ayah number 73 of Surah Anbiya, where Allah says, وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً, we have made these individuals imams. يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا, they have been made the imams, but they have been ordained. They are under our command to guide the people. And how do they guide the people? وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ فِعْلَ الْخَيْرَاتِ, we tell them, we do wahy to them, we inform them on all the acts they need to do, and based on that they do the acts. It was at this point of time that I said something that I don't want it to be construed as an act of oratory or khitabat, wherein I mentioned that when a person reaches the state when Allah is guiding him on every act, not just guiding him, giving him the wahy for every act of goodness, because these are ma'asumeen, they only do good acts. In effect, God is telling in this verse, everything that these individuals do are based on my wahy. And I'd mentioned at the end that when this happens, this person's hand becomes the hand of God, Yadullah. This person's eyes become the eyes of God, Ainullah. This person's face becomes the face of God, Wajhullah. This person's eyes become the eyes of God, Ainullah. When all of this happens, this entire individual now serves as a loudspeaker, as a mouthpiece of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of the earth. Now, the reason I want to take this a little further is I don't want you to think that this is an oratory skill that I want to explain to you, that just because I want a nare salawat, I'm saying Yadullah wa Ainullah wa Wajhullah, and the hands become the hands of God and XYZ. This has its base in the Quran. Now, before I go into this explanation, there is a little introduction, a notice that I need to explain to you and inform you about. Apparently, a lot of you have put requests to the Jamaat in terms of the Masaib, and the request for the Masaib to be in English. And apparently the Jamaat has reviewed their initial decision and have conveyed to me that, and requested to me that I should, if possible, recite the entire Masaib into English. And for me, inshallah, we shall comply with it. So just to inform you that you're not taken off guard, a revised and review of the decision, the Masaib will be in English. So in effect, the entire majlis will now be in English. That's point number one. Point number two that I want to mention is that, and this is, see, the anecdotes and the events that you hear in this, up to now in the series, and in the continuous lectures, inshallah, that will follow. You have to realize that these anecdotes, these instances, this waqi'at, are not placed over here for amusement purposes. These have not been related to you for the sake of a feel-good factor. Yes, they will instill a feel-good factor. They should instill a feel-good factor. It should bring about an iftikhar that we are the followers of these individuals who've got this level of authority given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, the intention in the entire series, whether it is the selection of the ayat, or whether it is the selection of the riwayat, or whether it is the selection of the instances and waqi'at, and being interspersed in the entire series of lectures, the only aim and the only objective is one. The only aim and the only objective is one. We have our beliefs of wilayat. We need to make sure that we reinvigorate, we revitalize those beliefs of ours, one. Second, the concepts that we don't know about the wilayat, we are able to enhance those concepts into our mind. And third, the third objective, and these are the three main objectives for this entire series. And the third is that those concepts of wilayat that need to be refined, that needs to be corrected, that needs to be polished, we're able to do in these series of lectures. So all the ayat, riwayat, and the instances and incidences are primarily based towards gearing to take you, and consequently me, with a repetition towards these three objectives. Having said that, let's come back to our thing. We were talking about wa awhayna, we have revealed to you. And I'd said that those words that I mentioned at the end, when I said this man becomes Asadullah al-Ghalib, Ghalib kulli Ghalib, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Is not an oratory skill that I wanted to explain. It has a base in the Quran. And I want to explain this to you so that you realize who are these individuals we are talking about. And when we have these shubahat, when we have these question marks that keep coming to these individuals, they are at the very, very least very unfair. And at the very most, it's a dhulm upon these entities. So, let me take you to an incident, let me take you to a statement in one of these texts that we've got, and then I will link it to the Quran to tell you how individuals such as this become a part of God, and not just skills of oratory. In our entire academia of the Islamic literature, you've got an individual by the name of Sayyid ibn Taus. I'm sure most of you all have heard about his name, Sayyid ibn Taus, a man of immense irfan in the olden times. Sayyid ibn Taus belonged to the Taus family. Taus means peacock. It's a lineage of illustrious individuals and scholars and fuqaha and urafa, the Taus family. One member of this illustrious family, a very illustrious member by the name of Sayyid ibn Taus. And he's become so synonymous in our du'as and books of ziyarat that at times the muhaddithin who narrate from him don't even mention his name. They just said, Qala Sayyid. Sayyid said, and you know it's Sayyid ibn Taus. Now probably you don't know the rank of this individual, but because the point that I'm going to narrate from him is so important, I need you to realize who this individual is that we're talking about, so that there's no abstractness or vagueness about this individual. Is he speaking correctly? Is he right? Is it wrong? Fulan, fulan. In order to explain to you this personality, very quickly before we go on to our discussion. All of us have heard about Allama Tabatabai, Sahib Tafsir al-Mizan. Who's not heard about him? Allama Tabatabai was a king in his sphere of tafsir and irfan and faqih. He was a mujtahid, a faqih, to the level of marja'iyat. But his concept of fiqh doesn't come out too much. It's tafsir and irfan. And he had a brother. They used to live in Tabriz. And he had a brother in Tabriz. This entire Tabatabai family, Allama Tabatabai, the entire Tabatabai family came from a very pious background, and members of this family are, in terms of purification of the self and irfan and ma'arif, are very lofty. Just as Allama Tabatabai had his forte in fiqh and tafsir, his brother had a forte in one ulum al-ghariba, a supernatural science, that in the Islamic terminology is referred to as ihdarul arwah. Ihdarul arwah is a science coming from the Ma'sumin, whereby an exponent of this science, by means of the methods taught to him by the Ma'sumin, is able to request the ruhs and the arwah of the past and the deceased individuals to come from barzakh. Now you do realize these concepts that we've got, that the ruh keeps hanging in the air and on the trees and keeps moving around. Somebody does suicide, that ruh keeps moving around here and there till the time of death comes. This is all balderdash. This is nothing. This is not true. Because you're either in this world or you're in the akhirat. Akhirat starts as soon as a person dies. And each of these two realms has its own qawaneen and laws that need to be followed. You can't go from one realm to the other, nor can you come back from the other realm to the first realm without the explicit permission of God. However, the Ma'sumin have taught us certain sciences by means of which, if those acts are done and a request is made in the bargah of Allah, Allah complies and gives permission to those particular souls to come to this world and speak to this individual. And the brother of Allama Tabatabai was one of the greatest exponents of this science. He is narrating. We're talking about the manzilat and the maqam of Sayyid ibn Taus. The brother of Allama Tabatabai says, over the years, because of the science that I had developed from the teachings of the Ma'sumin, I was able to call the arwah of numerous maraji in the past. Sheikh Kampani, Sheikh Naini, Murtadai Ansari, Allah Muhilli, all major stalwarts of Islam. He says, but there are two individuals, despite my very best efforts, I would never be able to get them. All the mujtahideen, all the fuqaha, all the maraji, whoever I would want, and he would call them if there were certain issues that would be plaguing the maraji today. He would use that method to ask those people who have passed away, those were stalwarts of Islam. They would answer, solve the problems for himself or for the other maraji, and that way it was a naql and intiqal of knowledge. Not just for the sake of calling somebody, but for something useful. He says, but I would be able to call everybody except two individuals. Two individuals, however much I would try to ihdar, to bring to my presence their souls from barzakh, I would always fail. All the others would be available. These two would never come. And I would always be surprised. And these were two individuals I would long to meet because of their, I'll give you the names. He says, I would never be able to meet. So he says, one day I called one of the maraji of the past, one of the ulama of the past, one of the fuqaha of the past. When he came, I asked him, Fulan, I'm having a problem. He says, what is your problem? He says, however much I would try to bring the ihdar of ruh of others, everybody would come. Two individuals would not. I'm not able to bring them. One, he mentioned Sayyid Mahdi Baharul Ulum. You must have heard the name. Sayyid Mahdi Baharul Ulum. And second, Sayyid ibn Taus. He says, I don't know, but somehow I'm making some, I don't know, am I making some mistake in my amal or what? But these two people never come to me. That faqih, that mujtahid, that marja who had come to him says, Fulan, these two individuals will never be able to come to you. He says, but why? He says, because of the fact that they in the alam of barzakh are the special companions of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Bana, if you give such salawat, I will go to sleep, Bana. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. He's joking, yeah? But he said, these two individuals belong to the special companions of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. However much you would try to use your knowledge and ilm to bring them from his company, it doesn't work. You're reaching a mountain. Till Amirul Mu'mineen doesn't give them the permission, your science will not work. So this is Sayyid ibn Taus. Sayyid ibn Taus has a tradition, a specific, he's got numerous traditions in the books of du'as and ziyarat. But this is the one that has been reported by Allama Majlisi in volume number 102. Out of 110 volumes, volume number 102, wherein Allama Majlisi is narrating this tradition from Sayyid ibn Taus, who's narrating it after collecting all the information from the Masoom. And what is this tradition? This tradition is talking about the entire etiquette and adab for a person when he goes for ziyarat. It's ajib riwayat. It tells you everything step by step, what needs to be done from the moment a person makes a decision. Ya Allah, I want to go to the ziyarat of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. And his adab starts from this point. And so very, very quickly, this is not the topic. So he says, as soon as somebody makes the niyat of going for the ziyarat, he needs to recite this dua. Once he's made the niyat and he wants to recite, he's recited the dua, now the time comes when he's wanting to go. When he's wanting to go, before he leaves the house, he needs to offer 2 rakat namaz. After having offered the 2 rakat namaz, he has to offer a certain dua. Now he's getting ready to leave the house, so he needs to do ghusl. While he's doing ghusl, he needs to do this dua. After having finished the ghusl, he needs to do this dua. He comes out of the house, needs to do this dua, fulan, till he comes, all this. I'm just skipping. So still he reaches the door, till the haram. He reaches the door of the enclosure to go, he recites Ibn al-Dukhul, a dua. Which everybody knows this, everybody knows. Allahumma inni waqaftu ala babi min abwabi buyuta nabiyyika salwatik. And it goes on. It says, then he goes inside. Now I'm skipping steps. He says, now this person enters into the enclosures, into the enclosure of the dhari, hatta yaqifa ala al-mashhad. He goes to the mashhad means the dhari. Wa yaqifu ala al-dhari al-tahir. He reaches the dhari of Imam. He says, now he needs to recite this dua. In this dua, there is one sentence that I want to pick out, in which now Sayyid ibn Taus, with his rank that you saw, has collected this dua from the various ahadith of the Masumeen, collected an entire adab and etiquette of ziyarat, and now he's telling, now that you've reached the dhari, listen and recite this. One sentence in this is I want to explain to you. He says, when you start to recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Assalamu alaikum ya a'immat al-huda, fulan. Then he comes to a point when he's telling, now you address the Imam in such a sense, in these words. He says, وَأَنَّا وَلَكُمُ الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي تَوَلَّى اللَّهُ رِيَاضَتَهَا. This encompasses the rank of the Ahlul Bayt. He says, how are we able to comprehend your rank when your hearts, أَنَّ قُلُوبُ لَكَ الْقُلُوبُ لَكُمُ الْقُلُوبُ, you've got hearts that has been taken by Allah in His possession, and now Allah is the caretaker of your heart. Do you understand what is being said? He says, how do we recognize your rank when you are individuals whose caretaking is being done by Allah Himself? That means all that you do is now coming out of the tarbiyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Words that you speak out is coming out of the words given to you by God. Every akhlaq that you do is coming out of the akhlaq taught to you by God. These are the abwab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You heard? And the ulama give the example. They are being used by God to administer the world and transfer all His administration of the world through them, just as the sunlight enters into the room through the window. Just as the window serves as the conduit for the sunlight to come from outside into this room, the Ahlul Bayt serve as the conduit for Allah to administer the affairs of this universe. When this happens, now we come to the point that if you have an individual whose heart is now in the hands of God, whose soul is now being taken care of God, without any disrespect to the extreme, lofty, exalted status of God, God becomes their caretakers. Now everything that they do, God says, I have done it. When they speak, God says, I have spoken, because now you're my loudspeaker. When they do something, God says, I am doing it because your hands are now obeying my commands. It doesn't do anything except I tell you. And this is what in the Quran Allah tells the Holy Prophet. O my Rasul, when you go to battle, when you go to fight a war and you take out your bow and you hit the arrow, it is not you who is hitting the arrow, it is me. وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. When you shoot arrows, Ya Rasulullah, O my Nabi, it's not you who is shooting. It's me who is shooting. That means now all the affairs that they do, God says, I have done it. It takes a big task for a CEO to take the responsibility of every single manager that he's got, and says, whatever you do, it will be accepted as mine. That will only be the case when he's so confident that this fellow will not mess up. One, he's got the ability to do exactly what this boss wants to. And third, there would be no difference in what the boss wants and what he does. Only then he can say, whatever he does is my work. This is what Quran says. وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. You did not hit the arrow when you hit it. It was Allah who threw the arrow. This is when it comes to the Holy Prophet. But over here, everything, now we're going a little deep, yeah? Everything that can be ascribed to the Holy Prophet, everything that we attribute to the Holy Prophet can be attributed to the Imams. Baba, you need to ask me, Hatu burhanakum. Quran tells you. You shouldn't be sitting, you should tell me, give me the proof. Because Quran says on 4 occasions approximately in the Quran. When he says, don't listen to when people just tell you. Hatu burhanakum. Give me your proofs, give me your dalil. You need to inculcate this in these turbulent and tumultuous times that we've got. Somebody comes and tells you something, tell them how to burhanakum, because this is what God has taught us when it comes to religion. Don't just take everything blindfoldedly. How to burhanakum, give me your dalil, even if it is me. Prove, ask me, where is your reference? I have to give, if I don't have a reference, I don't need to speak it out. If I have a reference, I speak it out. You tell me how to burhanakum. When I tell you everything that we ascribe to the Holy Prophet can also, should also, must also, ought to also be applied to the Holy Prophet, to the Imams. Ask me how to burhanukum, I will give you the burhan. It's based on one tradition. But the tradition is also important. And I will tell you something before the tradition. And about the tradition that becomes very important. You know why we ascribe everything that we ascribe to the Holy Prophet, we also ascribe to the Masumin? This is where there's a difference between the other school of thought. So why is it that every time we talk about the Prophet, everything that we associate with the Prophet, you also associate to the Masumin? What is the dalil? I'll tell you the dalil and I'll tell you history behind it. The dalil is the tradition of the Holy Prophet. Awwaluna Muhammad, wa awsatuna Muhammad, wa akhiruna Muhammad, wa kulluna Muhammad. You understood what the Prophet said? You understood what the Riwayat says? He says, whatever the first Muhammad can do, the middle Muhammad can do, the last Muhammad can do, all the Muhammads can do, because all of us are one Muhammad. So whatever is ascribed to the first Muhammad, which is the Holy Prophet, can also be ascribed to all the 12 Masumin, all the other 12 Imams, correct? Simple. But I want to take you to another different. Keep this in mind. This Awwalana Muhammad, wa awsatana Muhammad, wa akhiruna Muhammad, Kulluna Muhammad is one very big dalil for all those individuals who put a question mark on the virtues of the Imams. When we tell them the Prophet has these facilities and abilities, and then we want to extrapolate to the Imam, they say, why? This is the hadith that you need to say. And this is not this hadith of Awwalana Muhammad, wa awsatana Muhammad, wa akhiruna Muhammad, wa kulluna Muhammad. This is not narrated by a Masum only once, This has been narrated by numerous Masumin in numerous eras. on numerous occasions. But I'm going to tell you one occasion. I'm going to tell you one occasion where this actually took place, so that you need to know the history behind where this comes. This is probably one of the very early instances when this hadith was narrated. Narrated by whom? By the fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. Let me correct myself. Not the fourth Imam, the fifth Imam. But I will still not call this a correction. It was said by the fourth Imam, but it was also said by the fifth Imam. The whole tradition is about the fourth Imam. The last part is about the fifth Imam, in which the fifth Imam mentioned this tradition. The whole tradition, the incident that took place, is about the fourth Imam. The fifth Imam comes right at the end of the hadith to mention this tradition. What is that incident? The incident is related to that Jaleel al-Qadr Sahabi of the Holy Prophet, Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. Now all of us know, Jabir had been told that you will be meeting several Imams, several Masumeen. So he was there at the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin as well. One day Jabir comes to listen now. Listen to these things. Jabir comes to the house of the fourth Imam. Because of his rank, he had direct access to the Imam. He says he's sitting with the Imam and he's talking about several things. One of the things he talks about is, Yabna Rasulullah, there is a group of people who don't understand your ma'rifat, who don't understand your rank. Understand, we had mentioned, no? Wilayat means authority. So they don't understand your rank. But there are certain people I know who understand your rank. Imam says, Jabir, there are very few people who know us properly. I won't use the word completely, because none of us, not even a marja taqleed, has the ability to understand the Masum completely. And you all know the tradition. The Prophet says, Ali, when he's talking about Ali, himself and God, he says, Ali, nobody's understood God except you and me. And nobody's understood me except you and God. And nobody's understood you, Ali, except me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is a tradition which says that a Masum can only be understood by two entities. One, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the second, Masum. It's only a Masum who knows Masum. And God is God. Says this comes to this, okay, when we talk about Ali being the Khalifatullah, and we're talking about where were you? I just lost track. Where were you? Give me a minute, please. I'm getting old, so I forget. Jabir. So Jabir comes to the Imam and says, Yabna Rasulullah. You have to keep prompting me. Huh? So that means you'll have to keep awake. So Jabir comes to the fourth Imam. Says, Yabna Rasulullah, there is this group who doesn't know about you. But there is a certain group who does know about you. So Imam says, Jabir, you're making a mistake. Those who know us are very few. And he uses the term qala'il. Qala'il means very few. There are very few people who know me, who understand our ma'rifat. So Jabir says, Yabna Rasulullah, I'm telling you, I know there is a group of people who have your ma'rifat. Not complete, because nobody can have a complete ma'rifat, but some sort of a proper ma'rifat. He says, if that is the case, bring them to me tomorrow. Look how this tradition goes on. He says, bring them to me tomorrow. Next day, Jabir is narrating. This is in Bihar, volume number 26. You will also find this tradition in Tafsir Ahl al-Bayt. And this is also in the book Ta'awilu Ayat al-Tahira. 3 traditions, 3 riwayat in different occasions from different people. I'm giving you the reference. So next day, Jabir says, I get this group of people. They come inside. They see the Imam. Salaam alaikum, wa alaikum salam. With adab, with humbleness. The hands folded. They're standing before the Imam. Imam says, Jabir, are these the ikhwanuk? These are your brothers that you were talking about? Says, yes. He says, Jabir, these people have not got the full ma'rifat of mine. So Jabir says, but I know they've got your full ma'rifat. They talk about things about you. They talk about your wilayat. They talk about your secrets. They talk about you in such lofty manner. Says, Jabir, you don't know. I know. They don't know us. they don't know our qadr. They don't know our qudrat. They don't know our wilayat. Jabir says, I was surprised what Imam is saying. Imam says, watch. He turns to the people and says, do you agree to this fact that Allah sends His rulings and He's got the power to send His rulings? One, He's got the power to exercise His rulings. Two, when He exercises rulings, that rulings has to come into play. Three, and when His ruling comes into place, there is no power on earth that can turn away His decree. Do you agree to this fact? Do you agree that God passes rulings once He decides? And then He executes it. When He executes it, it has to come into play. And when it comes into play, there is no power on earth that can overturn His ruling. This is, yes, we agree to that. We agree to that. That's absolutely our belief. Jabir says, I was happy. I'm smiling. I'm telling Ibn Rasulullah, I told you. I told you they've got such great marifat of you. Ajaba, the riwayat says, Imam rebukes Jabir. Says, Jabir, la ta'ajal fima laysa laka bihi ilma. Don't rush and speak things of which you have no knowledge of. Watch. Ajab, this is bana. So now Jabir is saying, again he says this, these are the words of Jabir. فَبَقِيتُ مُتَحَيِّرًا. I stood up, I stunned, surprised. Then he says, I saw the Imam turn to them and says, do you think we've got... Now, while this discussion was going on, the main protagonist, the main person over here was Imam Sajjad. Next to him was standing or sitting, next to him was Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam. The fifth Imam is standing next to the fourth Imam. Imam now turns to the people and says, do you believe that I have the qudrat to transfer my face onto the face of my son and transfer his face onto my face? He says, Jabir says, فَأَسْكَتُوا. They stopped. They were not saying anything. Imam asked them, do you believe in me as the Imam? Yes. Do you think I have the qudrat to transfer my face onto my son's face and his appearance onto my appearance? Can I do that? They kept silent. Nobody said anything. Imam turns to Jabir and says, I told you there's something missing. Imam again asks them, do you think I have the power to convert my face into my son's face and my son's face into my face? Again, they kept quiet. Now Jabir is feeling awkward because he has praised these individuals in front of the Imam. All of a sudden, he comes out in speech. He says, Ma lakum, what has happened to you? Lima la tujibuna imamakum. Why aren't you answering your Imam? He's asking you a question. But they still remain silent. They did not speak up. Imam told Jabir, I told you there are certain things missing. This is not our ma'rifat. He says, Jabir then says, at that point of time, now I'm using the Arabic text that was used in Bihar al-Anwar. فَتَكَلَّمَ بِكَلَامٍ لَمْ نَفْهَمْ. At that point of time, Imam uttered something that we did not understand. Whenever the Imam would want to do a supernatural act, there was one thing they would always make sure they would do. This was the dab. This was the adab of a Masum. That when they would want to do a mu'jiza, a karamat, something supernatural, they would always make an effort to show that they are reciting something. To prove to the people, we are not God. We are praying to somebody to do what we are doing. Those people who think Ali is God, those are those extreme people. Those who think that Ali is ulu. Ali wants to show, the Masumin want to show, we are not God, we are servants of God, and anything that happens, we have to plead for Him to do it. Over here again he does this. This is the same thing which Isa said in the Quran, that I create birds from a model, bi'idhnillah. I bring back the dead to life, bi'idhnillah. I do this, bi'idhnillah. I know what is stored in your house, bi'idhnillah. I know what is happening in your houses, bi'idhnillah. The word idhnillah, permission of God, with the permission of God, is always there. Over here again, the riwayat says, فَتَكَلَّمَ بِكَلَامٍ لَمْ نَفْحَ. He uttered some words that I did not know. Then the riwayat said, Idhan. As soon as he completed staying, people were shocked because the man standing, Zainul Abidin, suddenly reappeared as Imam Baqir alayhi salam. The boy who was standing next to Imam Zainul Abidin now becomes Zainul Abidin. The face of Imam Baqir is not transferred to the face of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. The face of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam is not transferred to the face of Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam. Riwayat says, as soon as lamma rao, as soon as they saw this, kharru sajjadan, they fell down in sajda. And they said, Amanna bi vilayatikum. We now believe in your vilayat. Wa aqrarna bi khasa'isikum. And we have accepted and acknowledged your virtues. Imam says, Irfa'u ru'usakum, raise your heads. As they raise the heads, they still see who was Imam Zainul Abidin. The face is on the boy. What was supposed to be a boy, the face is on Imam Baqir is now standing in the body of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. At that time, Imam Zainul Abidin says, Ya qawm la ta'ajibu min qudratillah. Do not do ta'ajjub, do not be amazed at the power of God and what God can do. For ana Muhammad wa Muhammad Ali. He says, Ana Muhammad, I am Muhammad now with the face of Muhammad. Wa huwa Ali, and he is Ali. Then he says, Ana Ali wa huwa Muhammad. I am Ali and he is Muhammad. He says this, then he stops. As soon as he stops, Imam Muhammad Baqir comes in speech. Exactly the same words that his father uttered to the people. He comes and says, Ya qawm la ta'ajibu min qudratillah, min amrillah. Do not doubt, do not be amazed at the power of God that He's transferred my face onto the face of my father and my father's face onto my face. Then he says the same thing. Ana Ali wa huwa Muhammad. I am Ali now with the face of Zainul Abidin. He is Muhammad. Wa huwa Ali. He is actually Zainul Abidin and I'm actually Muhammadan al-Baqir. And it is at this point of time he says, do you know why this is the case? He says this is the case because all of us come from one nur. We come from the one Amr of God. And now he uses the word Awwaluna Muhammad wa awsatuna Muhammad wa akhiruna Muhammad wa kulluna Muhammad. And before they could realize, everything turns back to the original. Imam Muhammad Baqir's face comes back to his face. Imam Sajjad's face comes back to his face. His Imam says, now go, you've seen what we can do. You've got this kind of ma'rifat of what we are able to do. But he gives them a warning. He says, keep this to yourself. Don't divulge this out, because your enemies will not be able to digest this. Yukadhibukum. They will go against you. They will call you liars. They will make your life and the community hell. Keep this to yourself and maintain this ma'rifat that you've got about our wilayat and the qudrat that God has given to us. It was in these circumstances that the fifth Imam narrated this tradition, Awwaluna, Awsatuna, Akhiruna, Kulluna. And it is this tradition that we use to extrapolate the riwayat which attributes the rank and the ismat and the fantastic exalted status of the Holy Prophet to all the Imams. This is the tradition. And because of this, you saw the vilayat, you saw the authority. I've given you the references. Because of this, our maraji, our ulama, our fuqaha mention one thing that the Ahl al-Tasannun are not able to understand. And that is that we believe vilayat is superior to nubuwwat. Remember we said we'll be picking up one thing every day to explain to you. Listen carefully. If you've heard this first sentence, you cannot go out of this enclosure till you hear the rest. I have not said vilayat an imamat or a man is greater to a nabi. I have said vilayat is superior to nubuwwat. Let me explain. Till you don't hear this, you cannot go out. If you go out, you cannot talk about this to anybody till you finish this explanation. There have been times in the entire period, in the era, where you have 124,000 prophets sent by God. There were times where there would be many prophets at one time. I want to pick up one era of two prophets, and it's ideally I usually tend to pick out either hadith or certain instances that are known so that explanation becomes easy for you to understand and I have to spend less time. There was a period of time when two of the prophets that all of you know were living at the same time in a region very close to each other, in each other's vicinity. One was Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the other was Hazrat Lut alayhi salam. Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Lut were related to one another. At that time, the Shariat of Hazrat Ibrahim was in the rule. Hazrat Lut was ordained, was decreed and ordered to follow the Shariat of Hazrat Ibrahim. Now I want to ask you a question. Both of them are Nabi. Hazrat Ibrahim is Nabi. Hazrat Lut is Nabi. Both are Ma'asum. Both are Nabi. Both have been sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Both have been given the authority, the obligation to preach the religion of God, the Tawheed, the Nubuwwat, the Qiyamat. Then why is it that the rank of Ibrahim was superior to the rank of Hazrat Lut, as a result of which Lut was said, you will have to follow the teachings of Hazrat Ibrahim? Why? There must be some difference here. The difference lies in the authority that God has given to them. In other words, the difference lies in the vilayat that is given to them. Baba, yesterday we spoke the different levels of vilayat. We spoke the vilayat of brother over brother. We spoke the vilayat of parents over children. And then we spoke the vilayat mutlaqa of the Holy Prophet over the entire universe. The vilayat has ranks. Over here, Ibrahim had vilayat. He has authority. Hazrat Lut has authority. He has vilayat. But the vilayat of Ibrahim was superior to the vilayat of Hazrat Lut, as a result of which he was a superior prophet as opposed to Hazrat Lut. You understand what is happening? Because of the rank of the vilayat. Both are Nabi. Both have Nubuwwat. What is it that distinguishes one over the other? If one was Nabi, if Hazrat Ibrahim was Nabi and Hazrat Lut was an ordinary individual, you can say, oh, he's got Nubuwwat, he doesn't have Nubuwwat. But both have Nubuwwat. Then what is it that separates one from the other? Is the level of vilayat. The level of authority that God has given to both of them. The level of authority given to Ibrahim was far superior to the level of authority given to Hazrat Lut. In other words, the rank of vilayat given to Ibrahim was superior to the rank of vilayat given to Hazrat Lut, as a result of which Ibrahim becomes the leader and Lut becomes the follower. Now when you talk this between Ibrahim and Hazrat Lut, bring it over to the situation of the Holy Prophet and Hazrat Ibrahim. We all know Ulul Azm 5. Nimim we teach in the madrasa. Noah, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa and the Holy Prophet. Out of that, all of us know that out of these 5, the most superior, the Sayyidul Mursaleen is the Holy Prophet. All of them have the Nubuwwat. Then why is it that the Prophet becomes superior? Nubuwwat everybody has. All of them are Nabi. All of them are Rasul. They had the Risalat. They had the Nubuwwat. What distinguished the Holy Prophet from the others? It was a level of authority. Now we have become familiar with the Arabic terms. Let us not use the English terms authority. Let's use the term wilayah. He had a greater vilayat than all the others. He had a greater rank than the others because of the vilayat. The rank of the vilayat of the Holy Prophet superseded and was superior to the rank of the vilayat given to Musa, Isa, Nuh and all the others and Ibrahim. This is why he becomes Sayyidul Mursaleen. Now because of the vilayat that is given to this Nabi over the vilayat given to the other Nabi. Do you understand the words I'm using? The vilayat given to one Nabi as opposed to vilayat given to the other Nabi. The Nubuwwat is there in all the 5. The vilayat is there in all the 5. But the vilayat of the Holy Prophet is superior to the vilayat of the others. So he becomes Sayyidul Mursaleen. He becomes most superior. He becomes the superior prophet amongst all the prophets, including the other 4 Ulul Azm prophets. Once you've got this situation that the vilayat of the Holy Prophet is superior to the vilayat of the other 4 prophets, it becomes so easy to prove that the Imams are superior to the other prophets, because Awwaluna Muhammad wa Awsatuna Muhammad wa Akhiruna Muhammad wa Kulluna Muhammad. In this forum I cannot simplify it any further. I'm not using any complicated logic. I'm not using any philosophy. I'm not using any mantiq. I'm giving you simple facts from the hadith that you and I have been hearing from the time we've been children. We've proved the Holy Prophet is superior to them. And we've proved the Holy Prophet is just but having an extension of the Imams when it comes. Akharuna, awwaluna, awsatuna. Automatically, if the Holy Prophet is superior to the other prophets, these 12 individuals are also superior to the other prophets. It's no rocket science. And because of this superiority that is there, we've got a tradition. And this can also be, tell me one thing. When it comes to the Akhir al-Zaman, and then we talk about Imam al-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. See, I'm trying to tell you how wilayat is superior to nubuwwat. The Prophet had nubuwwat, he also had wilayat. His wilayat was superior to the nubuwwat, to the wilayat of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now let's come to the Akhir al-Zaman. In Akhir al-Zaman, when Imam al-Zamana comes, one of the things that is one of the musallamat. Musallamat means absolute certainty. One thing that would take place when Imam comes is that Hazrat Isa will descend from the skies and join Imam. Isn't it correct? Everybody knows. Then specifically one tradition comes to the fore over here. That when he comes, now you've got this entire Christian world watching this man whom they consider to be the Son of God, or one of the gods of the Trinity. And as he's standing over there, the time for namaz comes. And all of us know what happens. The Imam of the time, Imam al-Zamana will tell Hazrat Isa, Ya Ruh Allah, taqaddam, go and lead the prayers. At that time, in front of the entire Christian world, this Isa ibn Maryam will step back and say, this is not my maqam. You are the Imam. You will lead, I will follow you. This is a Nabi. This is nubuwwat that is behind, I won't say imamat, I would say wilayat. This is the rank of the wilayat. When I tell you wilayat is superior to nubuwwat, this is what it means. You find a wali standing in front and a nabi standing behind. We are not talking about individuals and personalities. We are talking about the rank. The wilayat, the ultimate, the mutlaqa wilayat is of such a rank that nubuwwat has to bow down. Except when you have a wali, when you have the wilayat of the absolute authority joining with the nubuwwat like the Holy Prophet, then he doesn't step back. Because in addition to the nubuwwat, he also has the wilayat mutlaqa, the absolute wilayat. He then becomes absolutely the supreme being in the entire universe. But other than that, any prophet who's got a nubuwwat, but not that absolute wilayat, will always stand behind that individual who God has given the absolute authority, which is called wilayat mutlaqa, absolute wilayat. This shows that wilayat mutlaqa of the Ahlul Bayt is superior to the nubuwwat. This is something the others can't understand. How does it work? Because they don't have the collection of the traditions. After the death of the Holy Prophet, their entire collection of hadith stopped. Because they believed only in the Holy Prophet. But after the death of the Holy Prophet, up to 255 Hijri, we had the 12th Imam. And we kept getting the ahadith, and we kept getting the explanation, and we kept getting the elucidation of all the problems, till we've come across this point where we know exactly what is the rank of the Ahlul Bayt. But don't be surprised, that wilayat is superior to, and this is again musallamata. I'm telling you, none of the things stated from this mimbar by me is not from the mainstream maraji. You will find some wild theories. But here, we are not here to promote wild theories. We are here to promote what our maraji is saying. People like Ayatullah al-Uzma Sistani, people like Ayatullah al-Uzma Khurasani, people like Ayatullah al-Uzma Zanjani, people like Ayatullah al-Uzma Sheikh Fayyad, people like Ayatullah al-Uzma Sheikh Bashir Najaf. These are the mainstream maraji who are carrying the vanguard of Islam, Shiite Islam. This is the proof, this is the opinions that we want. We don't want those Shad and Nadir, those coming from some little corner of certain portion of UK coming up and saying, oh, this is an opinion. That is not our belief. You can have it if you're a mujtahid, fair enough. That is hujjat for you, not hujjat for me, because we follow the mainstream ulama. Correct? Yes? Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Having understood this, let me tell you one thing. Because we are talking about now the vilayat with respect to the nubuwwat. And if we have not known this, we need to know this. Because this is our objective. Whatever we know, we need to rejuvenate it, reinvigorate it. Whatever we don't know, we need to add. And whatever we know incorrectly needs to be polished and corrected. This is the aim of this entire series. Riwayat tells us, because of this wilayat of the Ahlul Bayt, which is equated to the wilayat of the Holy Prophet, every Nabi had the ma'rifat of the Ahlul Bayt. Every Nabi. Again, without any of this thing, the proofs, hadith, everything available. The sixth Imam has gone on record to have stated, he's saying, Ma nubbiya nabiyyun wa ma ursila rasulun illa bi vilayatina wa tafdilina ala man sibana. He says, no prophet was made a prophet. No Rasul was given the Risalah till they accepted that we had a vilayat that was supreme, until they accepted that we are superior to everything else other than us, man sibana. This is ajaba. Imam is saying the prophets were told that till you don't accept the greatness of these individuals, and not just the greatness of these individuals, ala man sivahum, anybody other than them are inferior to them. Till you don't accept them, you will not be given the Risalat and Nubuwwat. It's only when they accepted it, the sixth Imam is saying, Biharul Anwar, they were given the Vilayat, they were given the Nubuwwat, they were given the Risalat, they were made prophets and sent to this world. See, in the Quran, there is a verse in Surah Safat. Surah Safat is Surah number 37. Now, it might be difficult for you to know and picture Surah number 37. But Surah number 37 is just after Surah Yasin. Surah Yasin is Surah number 36. Surah Safat is Surah number 37. In Surah number 37, verse number 83. 83. There is one verse that has a lot of connotations and discussions in the academic mufassirin. And the verse says, وَإِنَّ مِن شِيعَتِهِ لَإِبْرَاهِيمَ. Understand this, huh? When I'm telling you the Imams were made, the vilayat of the Imams was made incumbent upon the Prophets before the Nubuwwat was given to them, it is because of this. Surah number 37, verse number 83. The verse says, إِنَّ مِن شِيعَتِهِ لَإِبْرَاهِيمَ. Look at the translation. I will read the verse again. I will repeat the translation. I will highlight one word where a lot of debate has gone. It says, إِنَّ مِن شِيعَتِهِ لَإِبْرَاهِيمَ. And surely from his Shia was Ibrahim. إِنَّ مِن شِيعَتِهِ لَإِبْرَاهِيمَ. Surely from his Shia was Ibrahim. The entire discussion revolves around this word his. Who does this his Shia refer to? Inna min shi'ati, surely from his Shia was Ibrahim. Who's his? A lot of opinions here and there. I want to take you to a tradition from two books, same tradition. Tafsirul Burhan and the book Al-Amali of Sheikh Saduq. All of us have heard of Sheikh Saduq, haven't we? Let me give you a little understanding of who the Sheikh Saduq is. See, it is very important for me to clarify from the very beginning any doubts that could come to you. Okay, you don't have doubts about the individual who's talking about the hadith, because the moment you start having doubts about the individual who's talked about the hadith, you will doubt the hadith. So first of all, we talk and remove that obscurity and vagueness right from the beginning. In the book Al-Amali, Tafsir al-Burhan, probably you might want to leave it. But Al-Amali of Sheikh Saduq was the son of Ali ibn Babwa Qumi. Sheikh Saduq was the son of Ali ibn Babwa Qumi. One of his books becomes one of those four Kutub Arba, which becomes the fundamental basis for any mujtahid to give a fatwa. We've got 4 books of hadith. One of the books, Man la yahdurahu al-faqih, is a book written by Sheikh Saduq. This individual, Sheikh Saduq, was the son of Ali ibn Babwa Qumi. Ali ibn Babwa Qumi used to live in Iran. A scholar, an alim, very muttaqi. There's a big history behind this Sheikh Saduq. So understand very quickly, so that you know who is this person I'm talking about and why I'm relying on his book and his tradition. This Sheikh Saduq was not being born. That means Ali ibn Babwa was not having a child. He was not giving birth to a child. And many of you have heard the story, but for the others who don't know, and just to revisualize the entire scenario, he was not having any children. Ali ibn Babu Qumi lived in the time of Ghaibat al-Sughra. That means Imam is now having contact with his Naib Khas. And more specifically in the time of the third Naib, Husayn ibn Rawh al-Nawbakhti. You heard about Husayn ibn Rawh al-Nawbakhti? Probably you don't realize who you're talking about. But I will give you one indication, you will know. Third Naib of the Imam. You had 4 Naibs, Khas. This is the third Naib. Husayn ibn Rawh al-Nawbakhti. This person you should know. Even if you don't know Uthman ibn Sa'id, even if you don't know Muhammad ibn Uthman, even if you don't know the last Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samuri, but this person you should know. Why? 15th of Shaban. Why 15th of Shaban? Yes. Why 15th of Shaban? Because that is the only day we read Ariza to our Imam. Ajab, this is on. That is the only day we write Ariza to our Imam. Because we feel that is the only day we need to communicate with the Imam. We don't remember him. Only on the 15th we want to write. But if we were there at the time of Imam Sadiq, whenever we would have a problem, we will knock at the door. But we are not there. Allah, the Imam is in Ghaibat. How do we do? If we had the Imam, we would talk to him. But you've been given an avenue to talk to the Imam. Write a letter. Whoever tells you that you have to have that long strip of saffron colored the text where you write between those little paragraphs. Nobody says that. Pick up an A4 paper, split it into 2, make it into A6, make it into A5, write your hajat, fold it, put it down in the water. Who says not to write? We've got this problem with us, mates. We think our Imam is only for the 15th of Shaban. But he's there for all times. He's there to solve our problems. But at least we should elevate our problems to him. It's only on the 15th we want to elevate. Other days you don't have a problem. Then you start complaining. Dua mangu chu kabul nathi thato. Ketlu mangu chu kai nathi thato. Problem thai che. Baba lakho Imam na tame. Right? I write. I have a problem, I write. Because I know he's my Imam. There is nobody to help me. Khoda no to aisa na liya bhai. Tamne khabar thi. Gyare dost hai sambhao se. So you have to go to the Imam of the time. Write it. Forget the formalities. You don't have to have that long thin piece of ariza to write. Pick up any paper, write Assalamu alayka ya sahib al-amr. Allahumma ajil li waliyaka. You call about the Imam. Allahumma ajil li waliyaka al-faraj. Baba, you want to call him and do what? He will come to you, he'll say your mal, your bank balance, your house, your car is all problematic because every money has haram money in it. What will you do then? At least now he's in Ghaibat, talk to him. Write to him. You're supposed to write. I'm supposed to write. He is the only one who can help us. He is the only one in the world today who's mustajabu da'wat. When he raises his hands, Aina babullah alladhi yuta min. We keep reciting in dua, but where is that door of God? From him God gives us. But the door of God is there. We've been told you have a communication with him. You can write letters to him. We know it, we don't want to do it. Then we say, where is our Imam? Then we start complaining our problems don't go away. Right? Anything right. Small little chit, forget the formalities. Just start Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alayka ya Imam al-Zamana. Then write in English. Gujarati, Kachhi, Kiswahili, whatever language you know, write. But communicate with the Imam. He is saying, I'm here to help you. Nobody asks. Then we say, oh, God, Madina Mahod and 6th Imam Hota, we would have gone to Imam and talked to him. You got your Imam to talk. You can't see him, but he can see you. He receives your letters. He knows your problems. He's got the power to solve it. We're talking about the wilayat. So why not do it? This Imam is Zamana, this letter that needs to be written. This Imam is Zamana, the help that needs to be given. Now again, I've lost track. Sheikh Saduq, yes. Sheikh Saduq al-Amali. This Sheikh Saduq Ali ibn Babu Qumi in the time of the third Imam. This Husayn ibn Rawh al-Nawbakhti is that name that you recite when you're sending the Ariza down. Ya Husayn ibn Rawh al-Nawbakhti. I know that you are a Saqatul Amin of the Imam. So I'm sending you my ruqah, please pass it on to the Imam. This is a small dua that you recite. But don't get into formalities. Even if you don't know, say, Ya Imam, I don't know this dua, I want this to come to you. Had you been in front of me, I would have given it to you. I am not in front of you, I don't know this dua, I'm throwing it in the water. And see how Imam responds. But this Husayn ibn Rawh al-Nawbakhti was the time when Ali ibn Babu Qumi did not have child. So he goes, he writes to the Hussein ibn Raw. He says, look, this is the time of Ghaibat Sughra. You have access to the Imam. Please pray to the Imam that he gives me a child. He does that. Imam responds with a letter to Hussein ibn Raw and Nawbakhti. Says, take this letter and send it to Ali ibn Baba Yaqumi. In that Imam writes, we have prayed to you for God. We have prayed to God for you. But from the current wife, you will not get a child. And Karib, shortly God will give you a slave girl, which you will marry. From that slave girl, you will get 2 children. 2 children. Dhakaran, Faqihan, Salihan. There will be 2 boys, Dhakaran, Faqihan. Both of them will become Faqih. And both of them will be Salihin. They will die with a good death. Because of the dua of Imam Zamana, Sheikh Saduq was born. This is Sheikh Saduq. Understood? One of the characteristics of the dua of Imam Zamana with Sheikh Saduq was this. That because he was born by the dua of Sahibul Amr, he developed, God graced him with a characteristic. Who? Sheikh Saduq. And the characteristic was that he had a photographic memory. He would pick up a book, he would read a page, still instilled in his mind for the rest of his life. He would read a page and it will stick inside. He would pick up a book, he would read the entire book it is in his mind. Photographic memory. Baba, it had to be because it was out of the dua of Imam Zaman. What else can you expect? This Sheikh Saduq has a book by the name of Al-Amali. In this, he is narrating this tradition. What is this tradition? Now, it's in Arabic. I'm translating into English because of the time. The riwayat says, Lamma khalaq Allahu Ibrahim. It was in the Alam al-Dhar, in the Alam al-Arwah. And by the way, this Alam al-Dhar, Alam al-Arwah, most of the mainstream Maraji accept. Ayatollah Khoui accepted. We just had a discussion, an ilmi discussion a couple of days ago. Even Ayatollah Sistani accepted that there is this realm of existence called the Alam al-Dhar, where all of us, before our bodies were created, our souls were created. Quran makes a reference to it. Anyway, forget about that. It says, when Allah created Hadrat Ibrahim, Ibrahim turned to God and says, Ya Rabbi, oh my Lord, I accept that you're my Lord. But he says, Riwayat says, as Ibrahim was created, his soul was created, he turned towards the Arsh of God. You can't see God. But he turns towards that manifestation of the Qudrat and the presence of God, the Arsh of God. He says, as he looks at the Arsh of God, he sees a brilliant illuminated light along the side of the Arsh. He says, Ya Rabbi, ma hadha nur. What is this light? Listen to this, huh? I've told you who's narrating this. Sheikh Saduq in his book Al-Amali, giving you all references. Says, as soon as he says this, Allah says, Ibrahim, Hada Nur Mustafa. This is the Nur of Muhammad. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It says, Ya Ibrahim, Hada Nur Muhammad Safwati min khalqi. This is the Nur of Muhammad whom I have chosen from my entire creation. Riwayat says, he says, I see another Nur next to him, equivalent in brightness. It says, Ya Rabbi, ma hada Nur? So Allah is saying, Hada Nur Ali ibn Abi Talib Nasiruddini. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. This is the Nur of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and every name that he takes, he gives a characteristic. Hada Nur Muhammad Safwati min khalqi. I have selected him from my entire creation. Hada Nur, this Nur of Ali ibn Abi Talib Nasiruddini. He's the helper of my religion. He says, I see another 3 Nurs next to them, all equivalent in brightness. He says, Hada Nur of Fatima. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In loud salawat ala Fatima Zahra salawat. He says, Hada Nur Fatima. Then he adds the attribute, Fatamtu muhibbiha min an-nar. I have protected the followers and the muhibbin of this Nur from the fire of hell. This is God on Sheikh Saduq Amali. He says, Hada Nur Fatima. Fatamtu muhibbiha min an-nar. I have prevented, protected, and cocooned her lovers and her followers from the fire of hell. They will not burn in hell. He says, who are the other 2? He says, Ibnayha al-Hasan wal-Husayn. Then he says, I see some 9 other lights next to them. This is the tradition. He says, they are the dhurriya, dhurriyatu Ali wa Fatima. They're the children of Ali and Fatima. Riwayat says, as soon as he hears this, now Allah has not mentioned the names of them. He stopped at Fatima and Hassan and Hussein. He says, just the 9 lights belong to the children of Ali and Fatima. At this time, Riwayat says, Ibrahim says, Ya Allah, by the wasila of these 5 nur, would it be possible for you to introduce these other 9 lights to me? At that point of time, Allah says, Hada awwaluhum, the first of them, Zainul Abidin Ali ibn al-Husayn, wa ibnuhu Muhammad, wa ibnuhu Ja'far, wa ibnuhu Musa, wa ibnuhu Ali, wa ibnuhu Muhammad, wa ibnuhu Ali, wa ibnuhu al-Hasan, wa akhiruhum al-Hujjatul Qaim, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'in. You understood this. I don't need to explain this to you. His son. Mention all the 9 names from Imam Zainul Abidin till Al-Qaim. The point is not over here. This is not what I want to tell you. The point is the last point. He says, Ya Rabbi, I see a lot of small little anwar. Small little lights. Muhaddaqina bihim. All surrounding these 14 entities and lights. And the numbers are so immense, La ya'lamu adadaha illa ant. Except you, nobody knows the numbers of these small little fireflies type of lights. Who are these? At that time, Sheikh Saduq in his riwayat says, Hum Shiyatu Ali ibn Abi Talib. So at this point of time, as soon as he hears that these are the Shias of Ali ibn Abi Talib, who have been graced with the presence in the adjacent next, in being next to the Arsh of God, immediately at this point of time, the riwayat says, قال إبراهيم اللهم اجعلني من شيعة علي ibn Abi Talib. At that point of time, Ibrahim raises his hands and says, Ya Rabbi, you have created me now. You have exposed me to these individuals. I see the rank of the Shias of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I beseech you to make me from the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And this hadith says, because of this dua, Allah has put that verse in the Quran, Inna min Shi'atihi la Ibrahim. The Shia of Ali, Ibrahim was one of them. You understand where I'm leading to? There are certain things at the back of my mind that I'm using to answer it. Because some time ago, a certain ideology was being promoted within this country about the existence and the rank of the vilayat and the imamat. And the sentence that was stated was this, that imamat and vilayat emanated. The position of the imamat emanated, came out as a political offshoot of what took place in Saqifa. The words that were there was that imamat was a political outcome of what took place in Saqifa. This is not a political outcome of what took place in Saqifa. Saqifa took place on the earth. This is in the alam arwa, before even the bodies of these individuals were born. The ruh is attesting to the fact that I want to be from the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Understand what is going on around you. Let us not be so naive. This is not the reason for making this a political issue is to dilute the concept of imamat. Oh, imamat was a political offshoot that took place in Saqifa. Somebody wanted to become, somebody else wanted to become. One had the power and took it up, the other did not have the power to take it up. His lineage, then people began to call him the Imam Ali. But this is not an offshoot or political offshoot of Saqifa. This has been there from the time our bodies were never even created. In the Alam Arwa, which is accepted by Ayatollah Sistani and Ayatollah Khouyi. We need to be aware, we need to be vigilant. I'm not here to get wawa from you. I've said the entire reason of this series of lectures is to understand what is going on, the reality of wilayats. And tomorrow I will tell you. Now is the time of Masad. But tomorrow I will tell you how important this wilayat is to Allah, that He changes the programs of the Nubuwwat and the Anbiya to suit the program of the Ahlul Bayt. Did you hear what I'm saying? He changes the program of the Anbiya. He plans the program of the Anbiya to suit the schedule and the plan of Ahlul Bayt. I'll give you 2 examples of 2 Anbiya, just 2 tomorrow, of how their plan was changed to suit the plan that Allah had for the Ahlul Bayt. Then you know why I'm telling you Wilayat is superior to Nubuwwat. When you have a CEO of a company, say for example Sainsbury's. I'm not promoting Sainsbury's, just hypothetically. The CEO of Sainsbury's all of a sudden one day morning, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, he passes a message to all his managers. Tomorrow 9 o'clock I want a meeting in Falam place. He's a CEO. All the managers of all the stores in the country. I want you 12 o'clock or 9 o'clock tomorrow morning in the Hilton, London. Meeting. Now tell me, if these managers of various stores, whether it's Manchester or Liverpool or Portsmouth or wherever, if they have scheduled a meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, the following day, what would they do? They would cancel it. Why? Because something who's an inferior has to be sacrificed for somebody who's superior. Have you understood? This line manager's meeting is an inferior meeting. The meeting with the CEO is a superior meeting. The inferior person has to be sacrificed. When the Anbiya's program are changed to suit the program of the Ahlul Bayt, what does it prove? It proves that the Ahlul Bayt program is superior to the program of the Anbiya. But wait till tomorrow. We'll explain to you from the Quran. From the Quran, and we will explain to you how it was changed. Ajab, these are things that we need to know. Because in the absence of those thought processes that come will leave you completely confused. Because eventually we are here to mourn that wali of God, that person who held the vilayat mutlaqa after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happened to his family? This is not a joke, yeah? We are sitting over here and crying over Hussein ibn Ali. We've mentioned this once before. One drop shed in the musibah of Hussein has the power to extinguish the entire fire of hell. It's not a joke, yeah? This is not a joke. We're talking about who? Hussein ibn Ali. You know, at the time when, if you give me permission, I'll have a little water. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala. At the time when the Holy Prophet passed away, and I'm not going to recite the entire masayib of what happened with Hazrat Zahra salawatullahi wa salamu alayha, but when the Holy Prophet passed away, you know what happened, yeah? Fatima is in her house, and certain individuals come over there. And then the fire is lit, and the door is burnt. When the door is burnt, it falls down. Imam Sadiq was asked by one of his companions, how was the injury to Fatima when the door fell? How was the injury to your grandmother when the door fell on her? Imam started to weep. Started to cry. He says, why do you cry? Have I asked something wrong? He says, no, I'm reminded of something that is so difficult for me to bear. He says, what? He says, in those times, they had these nails inside the doors. When the door fell, my grandmother, behind was the wall, and in front was the door. When the door fell, it fell on her. It pierced her chest. He says, was it very bad? Imam started to weep again. He says that hole was so penetrative and so deep that till the time my grandmother was alive, it never healed. And he says, that is not the reason I'm crying. The reason that I'm crying is that it was so acute that every time she would breathe, blood would start oozing out. Now, if you go by the 70-odd day riwayat or the 95-day riwayat, even if it is a 75-day riwayat, imagine 75 days, that's a weaker tradition. But assuming it's a 75 day, 75 days, every day, How many times do you and I breathe? Every time we breathe, Fatima is bleeding. Then don't be surprised that when on the night when she's about to be martyred, she doesn't have the strength to stand up and offer 2 rakat namaz. She doesn't. The legs don't have strength because she's lost so much blood. But let that go. The door fell. She is hurt. Janabi Mohsin dies. Yes? Then you know what happens. She falls down and faint for certain seconds. In that, the things change. What happens? People come inside. They tie a rope around the neck of Ali. They pull him out. Within a short period of time, Fatima wakes up. This is not the masab of Fatima, but I want to take you to some place. She wakes up, she looks around. Ali is not there. See, Ya Fidda Khudini, hold me, Fidda. Aina Abul Hassan? Where is my husband Ali? They say they have taken her out. They've taken him out. Says, taken him out where? He said they put a rope around and dragged him out. They dragged my Ali out? They dragged my Ali out? He says, yeah. Yes, Shahzadi, they've dragged your Ali out. He says, Fizza, hold me one side. Called Asma. Asma comes, Asma, hold me from the other side. You know what has happened to her, yeah? That hole is still pierced. It's still bleeding. She's broken her ribs. And now Mohsin is no more. In that state, one hand with Asma, one hand with Fidda, they move out. But she's already worn her chadar. As she goes out, what does she see? As she goes out, she sees they're holding Abul Hassan with the rope and they're dragging him on the streets to take him to Masjid al-Nabi. In that state, when a woman cannot even walk, she rushes out, holds on to the clothes of Ali, says, Ali, I will not let you go. Khallu Abul Hassan, let Abul Hassan go. It was at that time that incident took place, that slap that hit the face of the daughter of the Holy Prophet. And whenever I come to this point, I make it a point to recite that verse of the Quran, Tabbat Yada. But I stop, I don't say Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab. I stop Tabbat Yada. That hand that hit Fatima needs to be cursed. Fatima goes out, holds Ali. That slap comes, that whip comes. The whip hits her on the hand. The slap hits her on the face. She falls down. Ali is taken into Masjid al-Nabi. As soon as she gets up, she sees Ali is taken into Masjid al-Nabi. She goes into the house. Now you know one door of Fatima opened into the street. The other door of Fatima opened into Masjid al-Nabi. She opens the rear door, enters Masjid al-Nabi. She sees Ali being dragged. She says, Khallu Abul Hassan, leave my Ali. They didn't listen. Twice she said they didn't listen. She had to do something. She said, now if you don't leave Abul Hassan, I will go to the grave of my father and I will pray to God to curse all of you. They didn't listen. She started to move. Ali is noticing from his eyes of imamat the signs of the adhab of God ready to come down. He is there in that state. He calls Salman. Salman, come. Salman comes. He puts his mouth to the face of Salman and says, Salman, stop Zahra from going to the grave of the Holy Prophet. If she reaches the Holy Prophet, Medina is gone. Tell her Ali has stopped you. Salman goes, Shahzadi, don't go. She says, Salman, do you see what they are doing to my Ali? They want to make my children orphan. I'm not going to allow this to happen. He says, but Shahzadi, it is Ali who has said that I will not, that for you to come back. As soon as Salman says this, she listens, she stops. She says, Ahakada Kala Abu al-Hasan. Is this how Abu al-Hasan said? She said, yes, he has sent me. She says one sentence, Asma'u wa uti. I will listen to Abul Hassan and I will obey him. This is that obedience to the vilayat that Ali's wife Fatima wants to tell us. When the signs of adhab came, the people got scared. They left Ali. Ali is now free. Fatima goes, holds Ali's hand, brings her into the house, brings him into the house. The door is shut. The history doesn't say what happens inside. But I want to fold my hands and tell Sayyida Zahra, Sayyidati, Ya Mawlati, O Shahzadi Fatima, I know you took beatings on your hand. I know your son was killed. I know your ribs were broken. I know you had to go into that majma of na-mahram to take out your husband. But Shahzadi, at least you were successful in pulling out your husband alive. You were successful in pulling out the Imam of the time alive. Oh Shahzadi, my salams to your daughter Zainab. She also got the beatings on her hand. She also had her sons martyred. She also had to go amongst the na-mahram. But Zainab could not save Hussein from the dagger of Shimr. In front of her eyes, she saw Shimr entering into that depression where Hussein had fallen down. She is shrieking, Ama fikum Muslim? Is there no Muslim amongst you? Hussein raises his hand. Zainab, go inside. I don't want you to come outside. Zainab turns. Hardly had she entered the tent when Karbala begins to shake. Dark winds begin to blow. Jibreel calls out, قد قتل الحسين بكربلاء قد ذبح الحسين بكربلاء وا مظلوما وا حسين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلب ما تم حسين